Welcome back or welcome to the Next Level Podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. And as always, we are brought to you by Apex Performance, the only leadership training and development program focused on the security professional for the security professional. And I'm super excited today to have with us Don Morron. Don is on for the second time with us here. And so joining a short list of those who have been on the pod multiple times. But I want to have Don back cover a couple of exciting things and announcements, but most specifically, last time Don was on, we touched on the topic of machine learning and AI and the impact on the security industry and dabbled in it a bit. We ended up going deeper in some other areas around leadership development and performance and all great stuff. But with the kind of just continuing impact, and there's been a number of recent announcements in the security industry about different companies. You had uh, friends of the podcast, Adam and Jeffrey Groom, having Rex AI acquired by Acre in the past, in 2025. Late last year, my former employer, the guys over at Hivewatch, they announced an AI operator. So companies are making big bets, and they have like a bigger company like Acre, smaller company like Hivewatch, and everybody in between tossing AI around. That's not new, but it seems to be getting more overt. So, all that being said, wanted to have Don back on and dive a little bit deeper into his thoughts on AI, how it's being used in the security industry, the impacts on the industry, and then talk about some stuff personally that he's working on. So Don, thanks for coming on. And for those who didn't, we'll link to the last episode as well, so people can jump in it. But like real quick, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and just a little bit because I want people to hear about how you got involved in the concept of AI and learn because you're a business guy, sales guy who by background who then picked this up as like a key critical skill and task. So I want to just lead with that because I think that's also super important.
Sure. Thanks, John. Glad to be back, back to backs. But yeah, I've been in the security industry for a little over 12 years. Yeah, I've been in sales, business development the entire time. And I would say about a year and a half or a little more ago, I got into AI, and that really happened like many people when they picked up ChatGPT and were like, whoa, like this is pretty cool. Except I took it a little bit different direction in the sense that I was just completely enamored with it. And you fast forward to today, and I gave up ESPN, and this is what I read and watch on. This is more than a hobby for me. This is almost sort of a way of life. And I wouldn't claim to be an expert in the topic. I would say rather sort of enthusiast and practitioner, and also which I'll talk more about towards the end. But because in my mind, really the only people that are experts are the people that are building it. Those are the people that actually tangibly put these things together themselves. But I don't think that I'm against knowing the trends, knowing the things that are coming down the line. And I spent in my personal investment trying to figure that out. For example, so last year, I went to two of the top AI conferences in the United States. One was San Francisco, the AI conference, and the other one was in New York City, which is the AI Summit. These were all AI engineering conferences. And there we talked about, there were so many things that was discussed and so many new ideas that really didn't hit public media until several months later. So outside of personal reading, watching, being practically there in the AI community, I can feel confident to say that I'm there and I'm in that community. And I'm happy and eager to bring that community to the physical security industry more so than we've seen in the past. And I've started to do that with mediums. And I say started because I'm also a podcaster, early podcaster with AI FISEC today. As of this episode, we may have already dropped probably our 23rd episode. But the content we talk about is to bring the AI latest and greatest and physical security inferences to the people we love the most, which is people in the physical security industry. So little background, how I got into it, and that's it.
And I want to highlight something that you and I talked about. So I also do So in addition to the podcast, I
Mhm,
facilitate a free community, member community called Next Level Leaders,
mhm,
and we do by popular demand. There was a request to have AI conversation in there. So once a
mhm,
month, we hold a open forum AI innovation meeting, and you're kind enough to hop in, and we record it and publish it back into the community. Not everybody can make it, and we do two. We do a leadership one once a month, and we do an AI one. And the last time, I think it was December, you and I are having a conversation, and I'll link to the community if people are interested in joining it. In that community, you'll find the recording. Our video wasn't working that day, I think, so it was just audio. But anyway, I want to highlight something that you brought up around like knowledge acquisition for AI,
mhm,
and the difference between, and this isn't a judgment, this is a definition. Because like I'll use a sports analogy after I highlight this, of like people who understand it and then people who do it, and the
mhm,
difference between like understanding the way machine learning works and studying it, and then
mhm,
being a practitioner of it
mhm,
and actually using it. And that, well, and even more so, you could say I'm a consumer, I'm a
mhm,
seller, I'm a builder. And
mhm,
and we had a really interesting, great conversation. And that latter category is where I feel the
mhm,
security industry is greatly deficient in builders.
mhm,
Because, and I worked for a company who had machine learning experts there.
mhm.
It's not always the sexiest thing. Like if it's like, all right, I can be building apps and working for Meta, or I
Right.
can work at an access control company. Like,
Yeah.
like like I would Indianapolis or Silicon Valley, right? It's like that's
Yeah.
that's not so. So that's something I
Mhm,
want to point out too, because it's like being a fan of
mhm,
football and being a
mhm,
football player or coach, right? It's like I'm understanding it, I'm in it, I play it, I've played it before, or I'm just a fan of it. Like I might even know the rules better than someone who's playing the game, but I've never played the game. And one of the things that I want to acknowledge for you and people like Adam Groom and Jeffrey Groom and others who are like they play the game, they
mhm,
understand it, and then are building it, which I think is even more exciting, which I think is what we lack. And so again, like there's pockets of it, right? There's some great data scientists and smart people in the
mhm,
industry who are working on this, but I don't think it's become a widely acquired skill set in the security industry yet. And what I think is unique from the background you just gave us is that it would be, I think it'd be more common if I had talked to an engineer, a sysadmin, who's doing database design for a SaaS platform that's a security technology, and then go, I'm going to future-proof myself and learn about AI because
right.
that makes sense. Um, but just spend a little more time on the decision.
Mhm,
You kind of said like, hey, I started using ChatGPT, and it was like, whoa. But like, was there
mhm,
something else that like drew you in to say,
mhm,
this is the future, this is something that I want to pay, not
mhm,
just pay attention to, and not just be like
mhm,
a passive participant, but I feel like I'm gonna go all in
mhm.
here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think sometimes the spark just finds us in different places, right? Or
Mm,
finds different people, right? And so for me, I got the spark, I got the bug immediately. And the first thing was like, what is this? Look into it. Um, I got a formal education. It was like a professional certificate from MIT around no code machine learning development. So of course I went through the basics of definitions and building models, and all of that. But uh, and let me tell you, like it wasn't easy. There's a difference between using ChatGPT and be like blown away and be like, oh, really want to do this and learn more about it, to actually like learning about the science and then trying to apply it. Because those things in the latter, when I was getting started, were not that exciting. And it was a little drudgery to get through that process because at my age, I don't think I'm not super old, but I when I was looking at this, I'm like, man, I'm going back to school. I got to learn this whole, like at least enough to be in the game, right? To have a seat at the table. That's the big thing, right? Why should anyone listen to me if they were to consult with me, work with me, confide in me, ask where trends are going? And I think it's a culmination of of applying what you learn, right? So when I did the education, that was right when I was doing the podcast for the first time. Because as I'm learning the education, I'm like, I got to do something with this. Wait, I know some people. Let's just do a podcast. There's not one that exists. And so as I'm learning, I'm actually trying to apply those to discussions with security practitioners that aren't necessarily this deep into that conversation, which allows me to apply it. And that was like the first start of it. Then the next start is like, how do you make money at? Is there a way to make money from this? And so that really took me to a much deeper hole, not hole, but more deeper perspective on where things are. And fast forward today, it's more exciting today, and the changes are faster today than they ever have been. And the acceleration of pace is unlike anything I doubt that's ever existed. Like I would know because I've only been on this earth for so many decades, but um, certainly the experts would agree with that. And so, yeah, it's hard for me to believe how you couldn't be excited about something like that if you are into technology. If you're not into technology, I understand. And recently, I'll say this one last thing. I did a post on LinkedIn where I believe that when people think about AI, they're primarily in one or two camps. They're either in the danger camp or they're in the opportunity camp. I was immediately in the opportunity camp. I'm not against being in the danger camp, right? So that spectrum there, I'm probably somewhere like a little over to the opportunity side, but not that much, right? Because I'm wary of the fact that the future is very unknown. We don't know what's going to happen. But I think I'm also, like I say, I think there's also a degree, though, to be honest, that as tough as it is to say that we're really not as in control as we want to be. And there's bigger things at play than we can help. And so my belief is that I am going to lean into this as much as I can. So when it comes out at the other end, that I and maybe my network is in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, a lot of value in what you just stated, and I want to come up a level and extract a few things out of there
Mhm.
before we move on and talk about some trends and get deeper into the technology side of things. I I've done two recent episodes with other folks adjacent to the security industry, and one that I want to just highlight because the connections are so interesting
Mhm.
uh, is a woman named Judy Selby. She's a cybersecurity insurance lawyer, and she at some point in her law career decided to go to MIT and learn everything she could about cybersecurity and privacy. And so I think of two huge disruptive forces in you and I's kind of collective career.
Mhm.
The first
Mhm.
one is cybersecurity, privacy, GDPR, all that stuff. The next
Mhm.
one is this is
Mhm.
AI. And
Mhm.
and then the combination thereof, because there's so much crossover.
Right.
Her and I spent some time talking and dissecting that.
Right.
What's meaningful in that for me, and I want to just acknowledge both you and Judy for this, is I just think it's funny that MIT plays a role in both, but it's a great, and the thing that popped in my head, I didn't articulate in my conversation with Judy, was now MIT offers a lot of their programming for free online. So
Mhm.
go there and you can learn a lot, probably not to the depth of what you did, Don, but
Mhm.
you can start on your journey from curiosity participant, active participant builder in that for no cost, low cost.
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
but the thing I want to acknowledge for those listening is both you and Judy and many others that I've talked to,
Mhm.
there's a thread through a theme of
Mhm.
identifying opportunity, and
Mhm.
then not just getting interested, but trying to
Mhm.
find mastery around that opportunity to really explode what you can do with it, and not just, again, being a passive participant and saying, all right, I'm going to like read one book and then be able to say, hey, I know
Oh
things
yeah.
about AI, but like
Mhm.
really diving into it and really being knowledgeable so that you can make a career out of it. Judy
Mhm.
by the time we post this, her episode will already be out. You can hear about how, I mean, she is like a award-winning cybersecurity lawyer, best
It's
around,
awesome.
right? Like how, like, but how many of those exist, right? The same thing
Yeah.
with like real practitioners of cybersecurity in the
Mhm.
AI rather in the physical security space. They're few and far between
Mhm.
because the work it takes to not just be like, hey, I can talk about algorithms. And like, yes, there's computer vision in my product, but like
Mhm.
actually diving into it. So I just wanted to highlight that. It was
Mhm.
a very interesting connection between two guests, but then also I think acknowledging what it takes to be great at something, and it does take the work to go in and to really dive deep into a topic and understand it. And because, and again, it's tough because in the security industry, you work for companies. You and I have both worked for big companies before. There's uh, a, a consideration of going wide and not deep. I gotta learn about cameras, I gotta learn about controllers, I gotta learn about access
Mhm.
control, I gotta learn about OSDP and that, and I gotta learn about
Mhm.
all these different protocols and this and that and how it connects together. And just like I need enough so that when a person asks me, what do you recommend for this? Like I have this whole catalog of shit. But then where do you need to go deep so that you can be both a generalist and a specialist? And I think having a broad understanding of the physical security industry and then a deep understanding of AI and the associated practices with that, I think
Mhm.
is awesome. Um, so just wanted to recognize you, highlight that. I think that's awesome, and
Mhm.
a example and representation for others, whether later in your career. In Judy's story, it was she was well into her 30s when she made this pivot. This has been the last 4 or 5 years for you, right? So this isn't, you're not a new grad who's like, hey, I'm fresh out of my undergrad and now I'm gonna go to grad school for, you know,
Mhm.
data science. Like this is something that
Mhm.
hit you later in your career as well. So for those who think they're too old and I can't learn about this stuff, I challenge that thought process a little bit.
For sure. Yeah.
Um,
It's never
so
too late.
let's talk about the trends now. So let's get into the actual
Mhm.
technology. So
Mhm.
I alluded to a few things that I've seen out there
Mhm.
around complementary security technology, leveraging AI, and a lot of it has to do with I'll say like high level automation, simplification, right? We're still, I feel, just scratching the surface, but your lens is much broader, meaning I feel like you're seeing trends across the entire technology industry, um,
Right.
while also having that view of like what's happening in industry. So tell me your thoughts, maybe how do you feel about what's going on right now? And let's use that kind of telescope of like where do you see things going in the,
Mhm.
over the next, we'll use the year of 2025. Like because I think enough is like you imagine, like it's Moore's law on crack. Like it's moving way faster than
Yeah.
technology has in the past. So
Yep.
we're not saying
Yep.
next 5 years, we're saying, 9 months. How do you feel like it's going
Yeah.
to play out? What's going to work? What's not? What are your opinions on that?
Yeah. You're right. So I do follow the overall tech space. Um, and they absolutely are in many ways light years above what we're doing in physical security. But the way I like to think is that's where a lot of my time goes in the sense that if I'm working with someone, a customer, and we're working on an AI project or we're doing something related to it, the value I bring is I can carry them through on a vision that will be less likely to be obsolete or irrelevant. Doesn't mean that it won't. It's hard to anticipate that with this landscape. But I think the big thing is they shouldn't feel FOMO with someone that is in tune with Silicon Valley more, right? And what they're doing as opposed to just what the physical security industry is doing, right? What I like to think about is bringing my 12 years of physical security lens and now layering on another lens for AI and looking through that scope right, through those binoculars and painting a picture for what I think could happen in the future and possibly when and why. And so when we think about what's happening in the AI space right now, 2025 will be the year of AI agents. It's everywhere. People talk about it. Certainly, I'll describe what that is. And I've got an article from Security Journals Americas that will lay this out in more detail. But this is the technology that actually makes generative AI, so the chat GPT kind of stuff that people use, actually useful, other than just chatbots, right? Or making pictures. Because a lot in the past, it was getting a lot of flack for those things, but I think people were missing the point. They were missing the potential of it. So while everybody was joking around about it, I'm thinking like, dude, there's something here that's special, not because of my own opinions, but because of the the tech industry's opinions, right? So when I formulate my vision, it's based on those leadership people. And let me start off with one. So Salesforce CEO came out recently, and he said that um, there's going to be more agents than there are going to be employees.
Mm.
Microsoft CEO says for every business workflow, there will be an agent. A business workflow could be simply grabbing knowledge information and pushing it somewhere else. Or for example, that could be like a basic agent and it communicates through like a natural language interface or something because someone's messaging it. But the point is that companies are going to have many agents. And those number of agents will show up in a agent directory of some kind. The first way that I'm seeing that that's happening is through business software that everybody uses all the time. Microsoft and Google. If you ask anyone what email service they use, it's one of these two. If you ask them what business Word doc, PowerPoint, slides, whatever, this is what they use, right? And that is a strong foundation base for businesses. I'm not talking consumer stuff here, so just businesses to now enrich those businesses with an agent building platform. The key is platform because within a platform provided by these companies, companies can have their own personal agent directories to serve their unique business needs. And an easy way to look at it is like it's a digital workforce that will come to people. And the importance there of the platform, though, to call out is that, and my belief, one of the reasons why I'm betting on the bigger companies and the back office automation space. I'm not talking physical security. We'll bring it to head with security in a little bit. But the back office automation space, so customer service, HR, development operations, for example, these are the first places that will get these things, and they're already getting them, right? But the idea is that the agents will expand, but they need to expand on a common platform where integrations exist, where it's an ecosystem, right, of APIs, where the company or a vendor, someone that builds agents, could build these low-code agents within these platforms to deploy agents at a lower price and faster. Today, or definitely still by this video, I'm sure, when people build agents within products, they build them not with these platforms that I'm talking about, okay? They build them using orchestrator systems. They use like Crew AI, for example, which is a really popular one, and a mix of other things in order to make agents. And they're quite complicated when you build them. So kudos to Jeff and Adam for what they did. But that's something that you infuse into maybe a product or that maybe an enterprise company would rather build that's custom. So the way I look at it from a platform perspective is that it brings agents at mass scale. Google will do it for the micro up to some size small business, maybe some bigger businesses. Microsoft will own basically certain size small business to enterprise, let's say, in that market. And that's what we're going to see a lot of. Now, there's other companies that are doing this too. I mentioned Salesforce that are going to do this. Everything's going to have an agent in it. That's why I call it, there's productized agents that will just be kind of included in some cases for solving common things, whether they're in customer relationship management tools or ERP systems, or expense management tools, things like this. And so that's that is the big thing that's going to happen in 2025 for sure. There's a lot more that's happening that has already happened by this date, that is even bigger than that. But I'm going to pause on that one because that's a mouthful. Um, so yeah, so agents 2025, huge.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that both I think folks will look at and be like, oh, well, that's not very. I think depending on where you sit on that continuum that we've discussed
Right.
of passive participant versus
Hmm.
builder and involver,
Hmm.
what everything you've just said either sounds very not impressive because you're like, yeah,
Hmm.
okay, like
Hmm.
don't we have that today?
Hmm.
All the way up to like, that's amazing because I understand
Hmm.
how difficult it is
Hmm.
to create what you're talking about. And
Hmm.
so, the having something that can do tasks and not just like, all right, not just asking your Siri or your Google or your Alexa to say, tell me the weather, right? Because I think that's the mental model we have when you say agent. It's just like
Yeah.
ask,
Yeah. Yeah.
send, ask, repeat, like this back and forth versus I have this thing that I've built that's going to take on and know what to do for both, for not just like what I tell it,
Hmm.
but I'm training it to go do something. And it's going to do that.
Hmm.
And it's not automation because it's not always you're giving kind of situational awareness to say when you
Hmm.
see this and you have these data points, right? It's more autonomy that's giving that you're giving to the agent, or and there's different levels and layers to it, which I think is what complicates it, but also simplifies it. Because to your point, if I have a productized agent where I say your job is just this,
Right.
then that's what you're doing. But I also might have a layer of what I'll call skill set agents where I say they handle tasks such as this, and
Right.
they can do it. They can just be assigned out things when they come up, right? And so and I'll give you a great example. You mentioned Salesforce. Really cool thing happened at ISC East was that like
Hmm.
Salesforce agent event was being held in the next
Hmm.
section over at Javits.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was able to sit in on a
Hmm.
roundtable facilitated by, and I won't go into detail because a lot of it was kind of under no confidential, but it was like we were everything was being kind of kept in confidence. We were sharing above and beyond what we would typically share as kind of professional courtesy. But I can say it was facilitated by the Salesforce security team, and they went in great depths to show us what their
Hmm.
agent is doing for them, what the Salesforce agent is doing for the security team with security systems at Salesforce. This is a
Right.
productized agent. Now they have currently, I was shocked, but currently there's no intention for them to commercialize that. I think they will. They have to. Like
Hmm.
I'm sitting there going, thinking in my head about all the competitive products in the market space and that are security products attempting to do what they're doing. And I'm in my
Hmm.
head, I'm going, the install base for Salesforce is massive. And they could just sell a security agent, bolt it on and say, hey, for another, 10 grand a year, boom, you get this, right? And they have their millions of customers that they can push out to. So, I mean, there's
Hmm.
a whole not so there's a couple threads to pull on here. There was one you've named Google, Microsoft. We'll throw Apple in there,
Hmm.
Salesforce, huge
Hmm.
companies with huge, massive software install bases that are going to have agents that they could point at security
Hmm.
problems like
Hmm.
integration, like data aggregation, like incident management, right? Full
Hmm.
categories of companies that could be eliminated by the
Hmm.
FANG plus whatever. I guess it's Mang now, Meta, not Facebook, but like
Hmm.
that, that category of group that we just mentioned.
Right.
Um, deciding we're going to solve these problems too. And historically,
Right.
they've been focused more on the physical technology security part. Think of Amazon with Ring and what Apple does with the wallet. Now Apple's getting into more of the access control space, but I feel like this is way more in their lane and in their competency, like them going building
Yeah.
brand new physical security technology.
Mhm.
Unlikely for them to be successful at mask unless they use it as a loss leader. Them
Yeah.
spinning out, the Siri of security operators, much more likely.
Yeah. So if I let me try to be as concise as I can. The way it's gonna a way the tech industry is saying agent, multi-agents, right? Multi-agents will be the means in order to work within the organization. What multi-agents will bring us eventually, and I think Apple will get there first because Apple Intelligence is in everything in your phone, if you look closely. It will bring us to personalization, true personalization for the first time. And that is the ultimate assistant. So when we think of an agent, I'm thinking of, yeah, someone that does my stuff or does mundane repetitive tasks, sure. But wouldn't it be awesome if they knew me? And who knows me better than probably whatever is wrapped in my phone right now? My phone probably, if it could talk to me, would probably know me better than me. And I think that's a plausible future where we have something in our pocket that is the ultimate assistant for us. And then that technology to me is really exciting because that I think lifts the security industry to a whole new level of what customer experience could look like, right? To say customer experience is not done yet. Like we have so much more that we can grow with, right? And so I do think, John, it's pretty important we define what an agent actually is, if that's all right with you. So there's
Yeah.
three main characteristics. So one is memory, the other one is reasoning, and the third is actions. So this is what makes them special, right? And this is, I would say, a broadly accepted perspective around what an agent is. So there could be differences, but generally this is pretty accepted. So memory, for example, is a knowledge base or context to the situation. So if, for example, if you're using ChatGPT and you have a bunch of windows on the left that you never deleted, ChatGPT has the ability to remember all of the conversations it had with you to understand when you ask something, oh, this is what John actually meant, based on the memory. But also, I'm enhanced with things that John normally asks about. So if he asks me something to do about formatting this document this way, I know he's consistently has asked this way, so he doesn't have to ask the same way again. And there's an enhanced memory there that makes interacting with this technology more real. That makes sense. The third um, is reasoning. So they call it chain of thought reasoning. Um, Really, the term is test time compute, and I'll talk about both. Chain of thought reasoning, all that really is at a high level is it takes what you're asking it or what the task is, and it's breaking it down in pieces like we do as people when we break down problems, right? So if you told me, yeah, it takes too much time, consultant might say, well, what does too much time mean to you? It's literally asking itself and sort of fact checking itself in some respects to give the best answer possible. But what's even cooler with this, because there was issues with scaling laws that the AI industry was saying just a couple of months back, right? They said there is, but there's not until we got to this test time compute capability. And basically, what that means is that based on what I need the AI to do, the AI will decide what amount of compute to use at the time of inference. So the time of inference is at the time that it works on the problem, basically answers my question or does the thing. So meaning if it's a low level intelligence thing or task to do, I use less compute. If it is a research topic, that's highly intellectual, it might use a lot more compute. And OpenAI released their O1 model back in 2024. We're now in 2025. They probably might still have their O3 model in review. And they've passed basically majority of benchmarks that people care about. One that they claimed was artificial general intelligence, which is like equivalent of human intelligence, but there's a lot of argument around that on whether or not that's true. But the point is his ability to act, to reason is way different than the chatbot stuff we used in the past. That literally was just guessing what was the right word to say based on human semantic language that was, how can I say, very flawed,
Hmm.
right? Because if I came to you and I was super pumped about the message, right? It sounded good. I got you excited. You might be eating it up, and be like, I'm going to buy whatever that guy's selling. But the reality is, if you're an expert in that topic, you might be like, well, I don't know. There's some holes there, right? But you wouldn't notice unless you are. And that's the way ChatGPT has been, right? It played off the semantics of language and it wrote really, really well. And so when you read it, it flows enough where you're like, this is really good. But what we need is accuracy, not showmanship. And so, and I think that's what the reasoning model will do. And then the third, which is the most important, is actions. So actions is the thing that actually makes this really useful. So it's great that it has memory. It's great that it how can I say, yeah, it has the better reasoning, but for it not to do anything with that doesn't really matter, right? And so actions basically connect these things to tools or APIs in order to take actions to do something, right? And this is where automation comes in, where we talk about potential for autonomous agents, which is kind of that the really the path that agents should be taking a lot when we talk about business workflows. And so those are three core characteristics that are differentiating these, why this is the huge thing in 2025, and why these big companies are going all in on this space.
I appreciate you making that differentiation and expanding on that topic. And I think if you're high on the danger side of the spectrum, a lot of the things we just
Yeah.
said might have made you worried. And again, like we talked about before, I don't think that is bad, right? Because the security practitioner in me, and again, we've shouted out Jeff Groom a few times. If you go back and listen to my episode I did with him, he has a very, very nihilistic view on the future of automation and AI and the downfall of humanity.
Yeah.
So like there is, but he also is building it, right? So there's this,
Yeah.
there's this whole interesting view, like I'll give you like when we first built the car, we knew we'd probably hurt people because it was brand new, right?
Mhm.
And but there's the equivalency of like, but could we also save people because we could get them to a doctor faster? I mean, even when you look back at our time through COVID and how we were able to expedite the delivery and the development of vaccinations through that period of time or whatever, right? Just like the
Right.
ability to point an agent in this context at a problem and expedite, it reminds me, I'm a big, Marvel guy. I love the Marvel movies. I've always loved comic books since I was a kid. And I always think about that scene where Doctor Strange is going through, he's sitting there and kind of like spazzing out uh and he's going through every plausible situation that could happen, right? How can they beat
Right.
Thanos, right? In my
Right.
mind, like he's an AI, like that's what I imagine would do. It's like give me like
Right.
show me all of it, do all of it, and then bring me back the best. And then not just like bring me back the best solution, but then take the best solution, right? So you have that I'm giving
Hmm.
it a task. It has memory. It
Hmm.
understands what I want, what I like, what I need. It's then doing the work. It's going through the 1,000, the 10,000, the 100,000 cycles, and then it's taking the action that it knows I would prefer based on the information that it's done, and it's doing that. The thing that might take me years, it can do maybe in seconds, right? And I think the critical thing that you pointed out, which is the new wrinkle, is it'll prioritize, like it also we can prioritize which things matter most and should be exosequencing becomes a prioritization exercise based on that information, and
Hmm.
compute power gets prioritized, meaning we're
Hmm.
not running because we're not having to build, a billion new server farms and have
Right.
a different type of impact and problem because we're running all this compute power. We need, Nvidia stock's going to go up another 2000x over the next, which might happen anyway.
Right.
But there's all those kind of things to it, which again take it from like a binary equation to a
Right.
multi-layer equation here, which I think is
Mhm.
super exciting.
Great.
Okay. Well, with all that awesomeness said, I want to wrap up with, you have some exciting news. You have a new venture that you're working
Yep.
on. So I want to give you some time to tell us a little bit about that, and what you're doing and the exciting, things you have ahead.
Yeah, so I'm pumped to announce that I am a entrepreneur of a AI automation agency called Highland Tech. So Highland Tech is a authorized reseller of Microsoft, IBM, and Google. I mentioned earlier in the call that the alignment with these top companies that have agent building platforms is key for scale. And so I made sure that I had those alignments in place. It's me, and I've got a total team of four, small team. I've got a data science that works with me that helps orchestrate through many other data science resources that I have accessible to me around the globe. I have an MSA with one of the top IBM engineering firms that has like 150 engineers. So really, we can handle pretty much in a scope. It's just whether it makes sense for us or the customer with the timing. And then I've also got a data lead that he comes from as a regional vice president for Bank of America from their uh, data analytics group. And so he's an expert with data. And as probably know in the AI space, that really 90% of the work is data and 10% of the work is AI. So the data hygiene has to be right. The data has to be accessible, and he can bring that to the table to handle that. And I'm also proud to say my wife works with me. So she is by this date still getting her dissertation around the topic of AI adoption in organizations. The reason why I found it important for her to work with me outside of the fact that we're both doing this now, and I've been doing this a little longer, but I'm excited to see that she's getting into it. But she's really only a year away from finishing the dissertation. Is that I do think that companies that want to have let's call it a big change, especially a fast change with AI within the organization, they need to lead through that change. And she's going to be much better at that than me, right? My job is to facilitate and help the teams implement the technology, making sure customers are building towards something that will last, something that isn't on an island. That's very important. That's why you'll hear these agent building platforms are a big thing. There's three agent building platforms we push, and the markets that we serve are between end users, security integrators, and manufacturers. And so we can do other industries, but one of the cool things about doing this, I think, on this podcast, is that for 2025, I'm going to be focused on serving the physical security market. And I think that's important because I have a lot of empathy to the business. I've worked as an integrator, I've worked as a manufacturer. I've never worked as an end user, but I've sold to plenty of them. And I think that perspective and then being an agency like this, which by the way is more rare, there are some, but certainly not serving this niche. So hopefully they stay out and I can get more business. But in the meantime, I think the big focus is educating the market about what's coming, why they need it, and that AI isn't just product AI that we see. Really, the stuff I'm focused on, John, is back office automation, meaning we build agents to automate business workflows. So that's the big ticket item that we're talking about. So we can automate things that used to take, $30,000 a year worth of labor hours. Let's turn it into digital hours that cost them fractions of that, right? At speeds that they couldn't have otherwise achieved. And it's no question in the tech industry that these things are going to make a huge impact. But the issue is how do we deliver it? And I believe through these platforms that I can resell and that I am certified to install on, that these are the way that people can do that. So if you are in the industry and you're looking for agents, if you have Microsoft, if that's your tech stack, I got you there. If you're a company that has Google, I got you there. Either way, we can build on those and help you grow into this next future and get your own personal agent directory that serves your needs. So that's it.
I'm so excited for you. One, congratulations on pursuing your passion, your dream. It's always scary. Before we hit record, you and I talked a little bit about
Yeah.
betting on yourself and finding the right way to make these changes and pursue your dreams.
Hmm.
We both we started with our podcast. We do our
Yeah.
kind of consulting work on the side, and you grow it. And eventually you hope to turn it into a full-time thing, which you have. That's awesome, man. I'm so happy for you. And one, I'd say the one thing I want to just highlight and kind of echo that you said is I love the way you've built your team, the intentionality you've put around the skill set that you have, because it's access to the data, it's readiness of the data, then what you do with it, and then change management. And so,
Yeah.
you filled all those pieces, you've articulated the team members you put into place, you and your wife included, around like what the critical roles are. So the organizational design stands out to me, and I want to highlight that because it's one thing to just say, like, I got a good sales guy, I got a smart tech guy, let's go. A lot of times, with a lot of startups, that's
Mhm.
how things are built, right? Someone with the idea, someone with the know-how. But the implementation sensitivity and empathy for the ultimate end user, whether that is a security practitioner, end user, integrator, or manufacturer, who will all have these problems and challenges, opportunities.
Mhm.
So I think the market for you is phenomenal. And like that's what I want to emphasize is just your readiness and what you've done. I think I'm just really I'm happy. One, thank you for allowing me to be a part of it, to be part of this announcement and highlight this. It's something you and I have talked about for a while. And I'm really happy for you. And then secondly, I'm just excited for someone like you to be doing someone like this in an industry that I care about that'll hopefully spark us to embrace this change and take
Mhm.
this forward. So I'm rooting for you, recommending you highly, and can't wait to be a part of it to push you forward. So, any last words, thoughts, or ideas you want to share with us before we wrap up here?
I'll be at IC West. See you then.
All right, man. I'll be there too. Well, thank you, man, so much. Congratulations. Best of luck. I can't wait to see how things go, and let's go do great things.